morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the CEO Story. This one is brought to you by Together CFO, so feel free to go over to togethercfo.com and get some tax savings over there. So they are our sponsors for this podcast. Vanessa is the founder of GoRN, which is an amazing revolutionary software platform, both for nurses and for hospitals, and generally value add for us all. Vanessa, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Casey. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, we are so excited to have you. Can you share a little bit more about what the app does and how it benefits people?
Sure. So we're two parts, right? We're a healthcare registry backed by some fabulous technology. And so what it does is it's basically almost like I don't know if you can think of a Uber-like system or platform for healthcare staffing. So any healthcare worker that wants to pick up a shift that is needed over at any healthcare site, there is a mobile app and a platform that connects them. So facility would go ahead and request a nurse, and the nurse will show up basically within an hour. But really what started as this scheduling application and technology has grown into a complete enterprise solutions platform. So it really does do all the onboarding, all the clearance process. Compliance is huge in healthcare, so it takes care of that. And then obviously the scheduling, performance rating, invoicing, and work logs.
Fantastic. So we'll get into more of that later on, but let's start with who is Vanessa and kind of some more about your background, because it's not the traditional route that a tech founder would take. So it's very interesting to kind of get your perspective on how you went through to where you are right now.
Sure. So I've been in healthcare for about 21 years. I am a registered nurse. I didn't get my RN degree in 2012. I basically started a practice with my husband at the time when I was almost 21, and ran his practice for 12 years. And while I was doing that, I went through nursing school, and I went local here in Santa Ana. I got my ADN degree there and really started working in innovation when I was working at St. Joseph's Hospital. They worked with an innovation incubator, and I had submitted several ideas. It kind of got my feet wet in the whole innovation entrepreneurial world. And that's when I thought of GoRN. I thought of it in 2016. I was in the back of an Uber, working day, night and day, literally 16-hour shifts wherever I can help. Always short-staffed in the hospital, seeing how much stress that has been causing, issues also with patient care. And I thought, wow, we really do need an Uber-like concept platform for healthcare staffing.
So that's a really good point. So you kind of had some creative brain ahead of this app, right? Where you tested a few ideas and you had a platform to express that as well with where you were working, which is really cool because that isn't always the case. But you followed that, and then you came up with this idea of the Uber-like app for the nurses because you were solving your own problem.
Yes, absolutely. And honestly, I mean, that process, staffing in a facility, takes anywhere from 3 to 5 hours. Now with our application and platform, that is dwindled down to about 90 seconds.
My goodness. So it's such an efficient app on both sides, right? One for the actual RNs and the nurses and the other medical professionals that are using it, but then also for the hospitals that just need someone instantly, or it's an emergency, or they're understaffed, like you said, all the time. So they can get a high level of staff, or even select what type of staff level they want without having to overpay all the time. So it's win-win for everyone.
Absolutely. I mean, there were several problems that we really wanted to help fix with GoRN. Obviously, the shortages in nurses and staffing and that whole process in general, but also, nurse burnout. These are real things that are happening throughout and within our profession. And with GoRN app, our nurses are able to do their regular shifts, whether it be an ICU shift, an ER shift, 3 times a week, wherever they work, and then pick up shifts with us, whether it be in hydration place, whether it be serving the homeless community, whatever that is. I think it's really a good concept to have so that we can really help reduce nurse burnout.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's amazing. So now let's talk about how you scale the business. So back in 2016, this was just an idea, a concept that you really liked and you wanted to run with. How did you take it from that point right there to where we are now with a multiple 8-figure business?
Yes. So I was lucky to have a lot of support surround me as soon as I thought of the idea. Obviously, I was a registered nurse at the time, didn't have tons of money, but I needed to find a way to really get, angel investors or first seed round. I knew that. And so I started talking to a lot of my coworkers, people that I've worked with, like I said, healthcare industry the last 20 years, people that I really trusted, that I knew were gamers. The startup world is not for the weak. And, you got to have that passion and that drive. And so, like I said, was surrounded by a lot of support from nurses to physicians, surgeons, and some real great operators as well. And we did our first seed run with those individuals, putting in what we call micro investors, right? Micro investment, as well as time working the actual business. And that's how we did our first $250,000 raise.
Wow,
And
fantastic.
we built our first pilot model.
So, okay, so let's break that down for the people listening, because you don't always have to go get one big lead investor or several accredited investors to be throwing in hundreds of thousands or millions from the off. You can do it the micro funding way, the crowdfunding way. There's lots of new platforms even that are coming out monthly, I would say, that allow people to take these micro investments and then stack them. So how many people came into that first that seed round of micro investments?
22.
22. See, that's a big number right there of investors. And some people would kind of be put off by that. But if you're starting a business, getting 5s and 10s and 20,000s of people, and if you have enough of those people, is sometimes more than enough to get you initially going until you can get a proof of concept out there and then move into seed A and Series A and Series B and so on. So then let's talk the next level. So now you've got your 200,000+. You've got a team of people that are helping to support it as well, with some sweat equity and some physical equity and cash. What did you do next?
From there, like I said, we built our pilot of the platform. It was very static. We just wanted to have something out there so that we could basically do our proof of concept, and wanted to also bring on larger investors so that we can kind of move forward with the business. However, being in healthcare for over 20 years, I've never run a registry before. And so it was super important for us to really run as a registry manually and make sure that we had every single function that we wanted in that application coded, so that we didn't have to do a lot of unraveling of code, right? And so that was another part of the journey, was really getting a tech partner to really help, because like I said, I'm a nurse. I wish I was a coder, because a lot of my ideas are tech based. But I got the next best thing really when I met our tech partner that we have in place now, and that's Dan Payman through Reverie. But with that being said, we went on our way to build that registry. We ran it for a year and a half. We started coding and thinking ideas and functionality that we really want to put in place. We did a lot of research on quote unquote competitors. And at that time, there was very little. There were a lot of scheduling apps. And really, even to this day, there is no application or platform that really does the A to Z as GoRN does. So that's super exciting. But with that being said, we went on our way to doing that, and we were super patient with it. And in 2018, we did a little beta launch just of the app, for which our users make their availability on. And then we did a hard launch for the service facilities in March of 2020.
Fantastic. So if we just break that down, it was that you had kind of the vision and the offset to create and solve this problem that you saw throughout various different hospitals, and then you realized that you needed a bigger team. A big skill set of what you needed was tech and being able to code and speak that language and really integrate in some of the complexities of your industry. In this case, it was the coding of the nurses and who can do what, and then how to do it on the back end. So you found a partner that could solve that problem for you and was the next best thing in the team, right? So you fill in your team and you're constantly making your team stronger because everyone has their own skill sets. We're all good at something and not so good at other things. So it's really important that as you grow your business, that you bring in those other team members to support you and support each other, but also make the company grow to the next level. So
Oh, absolutely. I can't agree with that more. I was always good at knowing what my strengths are, which is vision and creativity, thinking outside the box. But I brought on an excellent operator who worked UPS, Kenny Epstein, and then we brought on some really great team members that also worked registry for over 20 years. So it's really identifying what your business needs to move forward in terms of individuals and talent.
fantastic. So yeah, so it's having that plan and that vision of, hey, these are the seats that we'll need at the leadership team level. Then we could break that down or let the individual leaders fill out what they need and work that way rather than someone who isn't quite as experienced trying to guess what they need further down the line. So it's important to have trust and faith in that leadership team that you do create. So when you then went on to get further funding, how did that go?
Yeah, so we had various rounds, and really still a lot of individuals that we knew from within. I will say we haven't actually had, a large round with the VC or anything like that. It really has been friends and family for the entire raise thus far. We were thinking of actually doing a larger raise prior to COVID, and then now that doesn't seem to be the plan moving forward, just because we have had some great hyper growth since March. And with that being said, in terms of fundraising, they were individuals within our circle, other physicians, other doctors, friends of friends that saw what we were doing, wanted to know more about it, and they were our larger investors. The largest investment that we had come in was $750,000 from one couple. Other than that, it's just been here and there, and just what we needed to move forward before we actually launched. And in the meantime, really increasing the value with every pace of the business or journey.
Fantastic. So that's great news. So let's just kind of dig into that a little bit more. So from that first 22 or so micro investors and then word of mouth as you started growing it and kind of news spread around the various hospitals and other healthcare locations, more and more people got interested. You had a better proof of concept. You had, as each day goes by, more and more problems were being solved by the app, and you could tangibly show that to somebody. Then the next set of kind of network comes in. So you never know who somebody knows. So it never hurts to ask. This is one of the things that I try and share with people as much as possible, because just because someone's come in and thrown 10, 20,000 in, it doesn't mean that they don't know someone who's got a $750,000 check just waiting to cash, or you're waiting to write for you at least. So it's really important to cultivate network. Friends and family is always the best way to start, and then double down on that. I think you're doing a great job at then reaching back out to people and kind of letting them know that we do still need more funding. If you know anyone, let's talk about it, spread the word. What were some of the steps that you did to help that initial group of 22 plus investors then spread the word to more and more people?
Yeah, so it was always that conversation, from the very beginning. Even in that initial group, I will say that I didn't take everyone that I interviewed for coming on to being an investor. And I always say that when you do take on investment, yes, they're interviewing you, but also you got to interview them.
Yes,
Okay, because there's
absolutely.
true value of knowing who you have as an investor and what they're going to allow you to do as you move forward on your startup journey. And I'm very blessed to have been supported by so many people that I actually hold dear to my heart. And so they've been kind of letting me do my thing, right? But even moving forward, when we moved on from just my warm contacts to their warm contacts, there's still value in that because they trust that warm contact. And you got to always remember when they're investing, they're not just investing in the idea, they're investing in you. And when you have that experience and you have that warm contact with that other individual, they feel more comfortable doing that investment. So I always am thinking in those terms.
And that's exactly when I'm making my own investments. That's exactly what I look for. I look for, hey, has someone referred me in, and then have they invested? So that's already a level of credibility there. Is the idea good? Do I like it? Do I know that space? Yes or no? And then the leadership team, do I believe that this team can do what they say that it can do? Have they got the experience in that industry, or have they done it before? And they are like three of the main criteria that I look for when I'm making investments. So I'm so glad you kind of drilled it down into those three, because it's got to be two ways. Like it's so easy to raise money for the right business, but it's a lot more difficult finding value add partners. If you could find someone that can open up doors and, as an example, get you into additional hospitals, and that person is an investor or has a board seat somewhere and can pull some strings, that's the type of investment you really want to take, rather than just someone who's going to put money in and be a silent partner with no value add, because you're not just buying into them, you're buying into their relationships too. And that
Absolutely. I mean, I always say that's like my first thing that happens when I'm going to have an introduction. Is I always say, I'm always doing the background on them before I even hop on the phone, because I want to know what they're all about, right? And that network, and where it would make sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of it boils down to values and to vision as well, because if you're aligned at that core value, then you can probably get over most obstacles and most hurdles together, because you're in it together. But if you're not aligned from the offset, then there's more chance that things will drift apart and not end so nicely.
Sure.
So can we talk a little bit about how you scaled your team? So initially it was only you and an idea, and now you have a full team of people. Can we talk a little bit about what you did, the steps you took to kind of scale that up?
Absolutely. So initially, I did have actually a pretty large team to really start because we had those micro investors that worked in healthcare. It's important for me to do it that way because I needed their knowledge as well, right? And so we started that way. However, as we grew, and just as any startup journey, it's not for everyone. So some people, didn't really or couldn't continue with those hours in, or didn't feel comfortable, or it just wasn't for them. So we started adding on new team members and really going out there to see, okay, what is it that we actually need? We need in this business a chief nursing officer, we need an operator, we need directors, we need, client management, and, really a big team also for tech. And so really just identifying those positions and knowing moving forward, there was tons of planning. I mean, that is for sure. We are a very well planned out company. And if I give any advice to a company, you can't just say, hey, this is what I want to do, and I think I'm going to get there. You got to plan, and then check, and then replan. And so our team was really good about doing that. And as we grew with contracts, as we grew with nurses, then that was the growth of additional resources. With that being said, knowing our platform and what our vision was for scaling, we knew that, okay, if we can do this in this region, how are we going to kind of just take that, make a replication and take that over and scale out to other regions? And so far it has worked. And I think it majority is because we have an awesome team, but also because of our platform, right? It has really automated so many things that it would take more human resource to do. So with that being said, we still don't have a large team, but we're really ready and able to cover. We're now, doing nationwide contracts. And so that's super exciting knowing what our platform can do.
That's really good. And it's really interesting to see that you're not just a technology company on the front end, but also on the back end. You're really being efficient and having the systems and the processes in place because you've planned correctly from the beginning and had that vision of how to build pieces out, and whether that needs a human or whether a computer can automatically do that for you. So that's really smart to do. And then let's talk a little bit about COVID, because you're one of the fantastic success stories of COVID and how it's been able to add multiple tens of millions of dollars of valuation to your business. So can we talk a little bit about the impact of that and the timing and how it affected your platform?
Absolutely. So March 1st, we had just did a full-on launch, our first full-on large launch into a facility, our first servicing facility, with both the facility utilizing our platform to do all their scheduling, as well as our nurses utilizing their app. Went super well. 2 weeks in, we had great conversation, and literally a week after that, the 21st of March, we got a phone call from LA Mayor's office. And that was, I will never forget that phone call. We actually thought it was a prank call calling it. But we found quickly that it was not. And we ended up meeting with the mayor's office and getting some requests and to really help with COVID. At that time, I guess they had called other registries and no one knew much about it. So they were turned down. And somehow we got plucked from the choir. One of our VP of Clinical Operations, Jenny, was out on social media and they mentioned our name and got that connection. And we went from there. Basically, at the end of the day, before them, we were at 105 cleared nurses. Within 8 weeks, we jumped to almost 700 nurses. We popped up 92 sites with the city and the county, and we went from revenue of 170,000 to at one point 3.5 million a month.
Wow, a month,
so
a month. That's a key thing there.
A month.
A month.
Yeah, and so it was a very large hyper growth. And through that time, we also had hyper growth in coding. So simultaneously, we always had an envisioned really to have our platform work as an emergency response platform, because we naturally would have all those nurses on our roster, right?
Yeah, last minute.
And we thought, oh, maybe 2 years after we get everything going and what we're doing, we'll work on that. But unfortunately, the pandemic hit, and we were kind of thrown into that hyperdrive with coding to make sure that all our needs and what we need the platform to do functionality wise was in place. And both because of our team and because of this platform, we never missed a beat. We staffed close to 300 nurses a day just for that initiative with LA City, and we never missed a beat. So super proud of it.
There's serious numbers going on there and serious growth. And it's good to see that it's not just in one area, but you were growing on both sides of the business. So it was like extrapolating your valuation at that point even more, right?
For sure. And that has led to so many more contracts and doors opening. And like I said before we hopped on, we have another great opportunity that we're super stoked about. And we're just all head down and scaling and doing our best.
Story. I love it. And then the next part of, I think what we touched on before we started recording was you at this point was still in the LA area, right? But now you've scaled nationwide. So within that first pilot, even over those first few years, you were still very much concentrated in one location. And that's probably the best way to go, just to test and prove and iron out all the kinks before you open the real floodgates. And now I believe those floodgates are open. So can you tell us a little bit about the logic and the transition from regional to then national?
Sure. We always said, hey, we got to start small and we got to make sure we do a fantastic job in the region and what we're doing. And so we called it our petri dish, right? Let's make sure that we have everything in place, because the last thing you want to do is do that hyper growth and all these pieces are starting to unravel because you never got it locked down
Yeah,
in the small scale.
absolutely.
And so that's exactly what we did. And when we first got our first opportunity to go nationwide, and that was in Memphis, we literally had 24-hour notice to fill a need out in Memphis and to fill it for all the months. We still have that contract, but we had a 24-hour notice to get all the staff onboarded, cleared over in that region. And because of our platform, because of our team, we were able to do it. And we knew at that point, hey, if we can do it here, now we can do it in the other states. And also, we just had our first opportunity to do some international uh, services just last week. So
Wow.
it just speaks to our platform and our team.
And going back to this, when you look at successful platforms, we look at Uber, doesn't own any taxis, yet it's the biggest taxi provider. Airbnb is the biggest hotelier in the world. It doesn't own any hotels. This is definitely the way technology is moving and kind of enabling the end user to have more power and more options instantly rather than kind of the traditional route. So where do you see things going maybe in the next 5 years as we future pace?
Yes, so for sure. I mean, obviously we hit, the out of state and, utilize our platform. We still have our facilities doing the scheduling, but I really want to take this to internal use for all our facilities that we are now staffing, and really becoming more of an MSP where we actually are a staffing management team and tool. There are so many things that our platform does that could really add value to all our other competitors, as well as the exact client to which you're speaking to, right? The facilities, the hospitals, to really drive down costs and also to make experience better for their patients.
Got it. So
So
would that
really, I
like a
really
SaaS
want to bring
platform?
that in.
Would that be like
I'm
a
sorry,
SaaS? Would that look like an
that
internal SaaS platform within the hospitals as an example?
absolutely. We're actually looking to we were looking to roll out our first SaaS model at the end of this year. However, that could take place as soon as Monday morning. So that's,
Fantastic.
yeah, that's that's the big news coming out here, and so we're super stoked about it.
You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. Vanessa, thank you so much for sharing your story. I think it's so inspirational how you can go from being a nurse with a huge problem to solve and kind of putting yourself out there and constantly thinking of ways to evolve and improve the hospital and really it's the more value you add, the bigger the problem you solve is, the bigger the benefit you'll create for yourself as well, as really how I see it. So I love the fact that you were able to come up with the idea, but then also execute it, because I think a lot of people have great ideas. And you mentioned this before where you were throwing ideas at the incubator before this one really hit, but just to not give up. And when you get that right idea, to know the next steps to be able to really action it and create something from it, because I'm sure you didn't think that you'd have this much explosive growth in such a small space of time, right?
Right. I mean, I knew that it was something that was definitely missing, that we needed it in our industry. However, I wasn't sure how quickly it would hit. And I will say, to your point, I always say there are three things that are super important with a startup and an idea. It should be purpose driven, right? There's tons of value to that. You need to have tons of passion about what your new idea is. And then three, you need to have the drive and that work ethic. Put all those things together and you'll do well.
Fantastic. Vanessa, if people would like to reach out to you or go check out GoRN, what's the best way for them to do that?
You can go ahead and do an email to contact@gornapp.com.
Perfect, great. And we'll put the link to that down below in the show notes so people can get that very easily. Vanessa, thank you so much for your time. It's been amazing to hear your story and share your tips.
Thank you so much for having me, Casey.